Hi, welcome to the small shed where this week we've got a chair to repair. See you in a minute. Now, with the planes squared away and the chisels squared away, we're starting to get a bit of clear bench back, and that's useful today because I wanted a bit of clean space for today's little project. This is a sort of a halfway hybrid between the small shed and menin sheds, really. It's something that's come into menin sheds, but in all honesty I don't feel that the environment down there is ideal to be dealing with it, because it's dusty, dirty. You leave things for a week and come back to them. That's not quite what's relevant in this case, because it's relatively clean and tidy, and therefore needs to be kept that way. It's a chair that's come in that has just been re-upholstered, which is a little bit sad because it's a bit backwards. The lady wants the legs stripped back to bare wood so she can restain them darker, so that in itself is going to cause a certain amount of issues where there's an interface between the fabric and the leg. And they want the legs cutting short so they can, or so that we, in this case I, can put on these little brass casters. So there's going to be about 30-40 mil off the edge of the off the end of the legs, and I think there should be just about enough meat when we get to that point for these fixings to be able to fit. They're quite nice brass fixings. They are screw in, but what is a problem is the fact that there's nothing to actually screw them in by. There's no screw head in order to get that screw fixing. So what I might have to do is make some sort of a double pinned thing to tighten them in. We'll worry about that when we get to it. So the very first thing I'm going to do before I do anything else, because there is another problem with it, but the very first thing I'm going to do is to wrap this thing up, because it had a week down at the shed, and even in that time it got quite covered in dust and stuff, and I really don't want that to go on. So I'm just going to wrap the whole thing in cling film, and then I can protect it from dust, dirt. Ideally it would be better to have some of the thicker wrap that you can get for pallets and things, but I haven't got any of that. This is just more or less to keep it dust free as far as I can. There we go. So that's at least got that done, and on to the next problem, which is the big one, which is what has caused a certain amount of concern. There was a mention when I got the note handing this thing on to somebody to deal with, that one of the legs had a bit of a wobble on it, and it was this front leg over here. It's probably not that easy to see, but it's not the fact that it's slightly shorter, which is what people thought. There is a split running up there, and what's more, the whole leg, you can hear it squeaking probably, is slightly detached, I think, from the frame. So it doesn't matter what I do, I can glue the crack up, but that's not really going to get me anywhere. So unfortunately what it means is that we've got, or I've got to take off the bottom piece of black fabric off the bottom of this chair to get at this, to see just what's going on, because there is just no point in doing all this work if the first thing that's going to happen is that a month down the line the whole thing's going to fall apart and somebody falls off and breaks their leg. So let's just first of all have a gentle pry with a small flat bladed screwdriver and a pair of pliers and take out the staples that somebody has carefully put in. Oh, right, yes. I think somebody's been here before me. Let me just check on one of it, yes. Yeah, you can see in here somebody has screwed a pair of Meccano fish plates into the leg in an attempt to secure it. And that really is not going to cut the mustard, I'm afraid. Let me just finish cling filming and we'll, now we've got at it, and then we'll have a think about how we can best deal with it, because it's certainly not going to work like that. Because all you're tending to do all the while is every time you're drilling a hole, you're introducing another weak point that's going to give you a problem further down the line. So what I think, as a first guess, let's take that out and then we can see where we're going with this. But my gut feel is that if I cut a block of wood that is the same radius, diameter as this, the inside of this wooden frame, and then I cut out into that block of wood the shape of the leg, I can then glue and screw the whole thing into the frame there, either side of it, and it's got full support for the full depth. So I've got a block of hardwood, bit of sapele, scrap off cut. I'll probably use that one actually. It's about, what, 40mm thick. So all I'm going to do now is get that trimmed to the right angle, radius, by just running a pencil round it. And then we can sand or shape that to shape and measure the inclusion that there'll be with that piece of leg, and then we can screw the whole thing in, cut it off probably about 25-30mm in, and then drill and screw into that outer frame. The other thing is I'm getting to use the chisels, which I can not only find, but some of which are actually sharp. So win-win all round, the shed is starting to work. So there we are, that's the block cut. That will give a nice secure fixing to the leg, I think, even without glue. If I clamp that up tight, which is what it will be when it gets a screw in it, it closes up the gap on that crack there as I tighten it, and now that leg will not move like it used to, and that's without having got screws through there and gluing the whole lot together. That's just purely and simply with the clamp on. So, right, I've run super glue into that joint and squeezed it, clamped it up tight, squirted the accelerator on it, and that has sorted that joint out. But obviously I wouldn't want that to be a permanent repair. That's only really stabilising it while we repair it and clamp it. Right, so I've scraped with a card scraper just around the base of the leg while I've got the opportunity. Taking a lot of the old glue out. I'm just going to run some Sino down into the joint, so because it'll run down. It probably won't be doing a lot of good, but it's certainly not going to do any harm. Just to flood that whole side of the leg. The thin stuff just flows down nicely into all the grooves, fills all the cavities. I've got the block now ready to go on with glue all over it. That's drilled and countersunk. Right, a little bit of tissue to clear up any glue squeeze out on the base, Phillips or Posi drive. Just nip those up really tight. And that, as they say, is not going anywhere. Right, I've reinforced it all the way around with the thicker Sino as well, so I think I've done as much as I can with that. I'm just going to put it all back together now before I get on to anything else, so that we can get the wrap back on and get it all covered up, because the scraping is quite messy. Staple it. Get the scraper on the legs now. Take that back to natural wood. And that's got the legs back to bare wood, which is what was required. So I've got to put these legs on now, and one of the problems, I can't just cut a bit off the bottom of each one, because the whole thing rocks as it is anyway. So I need to establish how much to cut off. So I've put the caster through a hole in a piece of wood, and then all we need to do is measure up how high to the height of the runner, which is just 31, 32 mil, something like that. And then all I'm going to do is just go round every side of that chair at 30 mil, sorry, and mark the line. no going back now. So I'm going to drill these in slightly undersize, try and screw them in as best I can, but I shall use double epoxy quickset resin to actually flood into there when I do that, and then we can screw the feet on underneath afterwards. I think right, so there we have it, finished, ready to go back to the guy that brought it in. The casters all seem to work well enough, and we haven't got the rock that we had when we brought it in, so quite happy with that. Well, that's another one successfully out the way. I was a little bit worried about that one because it was into an area that I'd not done anything with before, but it just shows once again, if you sort of dive into these things, you haven't got a huge amount to lose. In that chair would have broken its leg, I think, if we'd have left it and just put the casters on the bottom. So we've got a solid joint now on it. Hope the customer will be happy, and should do us a little bit of good at the shed. Hope it was of interest. Look forward to seeing you next week when I'll try and do something different. I'll see you then. Bye.